Wanda, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just jump right into it. For whoever is meeting you for the first time, I want you to talk about, in your own words, who is Wanda Lopez?
When that first question I noticed, it actually made me think because you're the first person who has asked me to describe myself. So, my name is Wanda Lopez. I'm a mother of two boys. But what I personally like to do is I'm currently in school for psychology. I originally wanted to pursue the path to social work, but over time, I have changed my mindset to become more trauma informed. And so my studies are more focused now on using that psychology knowledge to become more educated and knowledgeable in the trauma field. That's what I speak about, what I advocate for. And aside from that, I do have a passion for photography, nature photography. It has been one of my outlets that has actually helped me heal. And with the combination of those two is how I have been able to create my movement. And that's what I'm here to speak on today.
I love that you call it a movement. That is powerful as fuck. So I just want to say, like, we're definitely going to get into what your movement is all about. But I just love the terminology that you use. It gives it power, right? It's more than just like a business. It's more than just like a side hustle. Like, she is creating a movement, y'all. And we're going to learn about that movement. I'm just really excited to learn more about you. Your Instagram really stuck out to me because first it says her story in a smile. And then in big words, it says trauma survivor. And I was like, I want to know more about that because a lot of my listeners know about my trauma, what I've experienced. I'm a domestic violence survivor. And anytime I'm able to come across someone who has gone through some shit and is using that pain to turn into power and purpose, I want to know more about them. So before we even get started, thank you for coming on. We are going to have a pretty heavy conversation. I do want to put a trigger warning out there now for anyone who's listening. We are going to be talking about some uncomfortable conversations, but on this podcast, we have these uncomfortable conversations. So I always start off with every guest who comes on to talk about childhood. We always go back because, in my personal opinion, and this is scientifically proven, the shit that we go through during our childhood 1000% affects who we are into adulthood. So I would love for you to talk about what life was like for baby Wanda growing up. Were there any pivotal moments during that time that really shaped you into who you are? Anything that stands out that you're willing to talk about?
Baby Wanda from the my newborn to teen years. I don't remember much of my young childhood years except being constantly beaten by my dad. And that was more so of the Latino community. I feel like it's always listen to what the man says, especially if your mom is more traditional where they listen to what the man says, it
Right.
goes. And
Very machismo.
yes, mucho machismo. And because I am the rebel that I am, I'm not surprised that it would always lead to beatings. However, that was not it. That was something that I could just forget because I was a kid. At the age of 8, I was sexually molested by an uncle. And this uncle is not blood related, it's a spouse of an aunt of mine. And it happened during the same year when my mother was hospitalized because my dad put her in the hospital. Prior to me even being born, my mom and my dad were already in a very toxic relationship. My mom had already been abused several times, but as we all know, the cycle of abuse, sometimes it's easier to keep ourselves alive. And during that time, I also had a brother and he was born with scimitar syndrome, which is a heart disease, and his life was at risk and he was at the hospital in New York. So the first year and a half was with my brother while I stayed with my dad. And not only was I exposed to the violence, but I was exposed to infidelities. I was always brought along my father's girlfriends, mistresses. With my dad's infidelity came a half brother that I have. And that was a hard moment to digest. But the year of 2001 is when I got sexually molested. My half brother was coming around more. So he was around a year old. My mom was hospitalized. And out of that moment when they were being abused, and I want to speak on this with social anxiety because I like the fact that you started with childhood because a lot of people don't understand that whatever we live through trauma wise, we may not even realize the impacts until later on in life when we're actually triggered and we get that flashback of that younger selves that we were. And so when the domestic violence incident happened with my parents, my dad came home drunk and started just smashing stuff. And my mom just wanted him to just leave and come back more sober the next day, but he didn't want that. He tried to force himself upon her, and because she didn't allow that, he started hitting her. And during that time, I took my brother out to the living room, and I had the phone on my hand ready to call my aunt because I knew everybody's number at that time. I was 8 years old, but I knew everybody's number, ready to call. But the moment my aunt was about to pick up, I hung up because my dad had crossed the living room to get to the kitchen to get a glass to throw at my mom to wake up after she was already on the floor. And so the reason why I share that specific part and that detailed is because that phone call, even though I was 8 years old, even though I was just a kid and it's not my fault, and I've been told that over and over and over and over again, I am 30 years old now, and it's something that I still have to let go of, because even though I've done a lot of healing, when I speak on it, I can still feel the guilt I feel because I feel like I could have done more for my mom. My mom fainted in front of me in the hospital. It's not an easy memory to go back to, but I speak on this because I'm not only speaking as a woman, I'm speaking as a child that I was, and as a mother now. Like, I did not realize how important it is to heal until I became a mom.
Girl, that's a whole nother conversation that we could have for hours. I definitely was not prepared for when I became a mother as well. Now, looking back at it, I shouldn't have become a mom at the age that I did because there was a lot of shit about me that was very much broken and unhealed. No one is the perfect parent. I'm never going to claim that I'm the perfect parent. I could have done a lot better. But my daughter has shown me so much about myself that now I'm able to really do a lot of the things differently that I experienced growing up. I didn't have a very chaotic childhood upbringing. First of all, I just want to say I'm so sorry for the things that happened to you and that you witnessed. I want to say thank you for sharing that because I know it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to listen to. Like you said, I think it's important for us to have these conversations to let listeners know that you're not the only one who has gone through or is feeling the way that you feel. So I just want to say thank you for sharing your truth. You know, my childhood it's interesting. I really can't remember a lot of my childhood. The only shit that I can remember is the bad shit, which is weird. The only time that I really can remember the good shit is when we're sitting down and watching home videos and things like that. But for me, I don't know why there's some sort of block, but I don't remember my childhood. It's crazy when you become a parent, how much the shit that you've gone through in childhood shows up. And you're really not fucking prepared for it.
That's where the whole trauma part comes in because So I was a teen mom. I became a mom at the age 17. 2 weeks right before my birthday, I gave birth. So I had to go through the whole high school experience. I was married too. He's my ex-husband now. We've been divorced for 2 years. But my boyfriend at the time, ended up getting married because he was being sent off for basic training. That's a whole other story because my mom is one of those that, like, she loves me and everything, but it was one of those things that I actually had a conversation to her about today that felt like I didn't have a say when it came to my marriage. Like, yes, I wanted to be with the father of my kids. Yes, we had already had these conversations even though we were young. But now me becoming pregnant and all the pressure of him leaving and everyone had an opinion, and I had no idea that the moment me becoming pregnant, still living with my parents, obviously, because I was in high school, but it's not like the domestic violence ended in 2001. It had happened before I was born. It continued up until after I left my house. My mom divorced my dad a year after I left the house. So I was 19 when they got divorced. So almost 20 years, I witnessed all of that, abuse, everything. I got thrown shit at me, glass, like my dad broke windows. Like, it was abuse. It was straight up abuse. When it comes to the kids, that's why the importance of trauma is, because when I moved back to New Jersey, because I'm originally born and raised in New Jersey, I moved back 3 years ago. There was an incident that could have led my kids to being molested at the same age that I was.
Oh my gosh.
When I speak about trauma, I try to do my best to speak more on generational trauma, because whatever we don't heal will end up passing to the next generation.
God, I just got like chills.
My worst nightmare.
I can't even imagine.
I will never know. It's annoying because Child Protective Services came to interview them, all of that. But it's like, I don't care who talks to them. I was not there, and I will never, ever, ever know until they're my age if they remember, or if they end up, God forbid, they relapse in some bad way because of that incident, just because they were exposed. Most people think that you need to be like basically dead to say that you survived trauma or violence or any type of stuff like that. You need to, like, even a word can trigger you for life. So the fact that my kids were literally at the same age, almost the same predicament, is what led me to my movement, because that year my marriage was basically shit. The reason why I came back, I had to relive that. I wanted to die. Like, I was planning my suicide. And luckily the father of my kids stopped me, because unfortunately the year or two prior, he tried to do the same due to his own challenges. But it's crazy that because of all that trauma that went unhealed, because I was 18, I had a kid, I got married young, I was living in an abusive environment to enter a whole new world that I didn't know what to expect from. And fortunately, I did not live any physical abuse, but in my relationship, I lived infidelity, I lived lies, I lived emotional abuse. And it's not like it was a horrible marriage, but I realized when the truth came out that my life was not my life. Combining all of that together, it broke me down. Coming back home, I ran away from home due to the trauma, and I came back into the same environment that I was not healing in, and I could not heal in. But I also felt like me coming back is exactly what I needed to face my trauma.
Hold up, pause, hold on. Because you're saying so much shit that I'm like, there's so many people who feel this same exact way, right? Especially you, like, you basically thrived in chaos, right? Like, that's all that you knew. Toxicity, abuse. I'm glad that you brought up the infidelity, because cheating is a form of abuse. Like, we gonna call it.
It's my first time.
Well, I appreciate you for feeling safe enough to tell your truth in this way, because your story, even though we just got started, I know it's going to help a lot of people. Cheating is a form of abuse, y'all. Absolutely, 100%. I don't give a fuck what anyone has to say about it. A lot of the shit that you've gone through, to the point that you wanted to take your life. That's how intense it got. I want to know for you, and there's actually an Instagram post, I have it right here, which is like the perfect segue to the next part that I want to talk about. This post said, "Time won't heal what you don't make time to face." When I saw that, I was like, ooh, that is a trigger for me in a good way, because I was the same way. I was the type of person that I've gone through a lot of shit. While my situations have been different from yours, there still was a lot of pain in my life that I chose not to face, until it got to the point in 2021 when my life was almost taken from me by the hands of my ex-boyfriend, my abuser. Hitting that moment was when I really finally decided to wake the fuck up and start looking in the mirror and being like, you got some shit you got to work on, because you're continuing on this cycle of toxicity, picking these shitty fucking partners, doing this same bullshit over and over, working at these jobs that make you miserable, but you're not doing anything to change your circumstance. And that's when I really had to look in the mirror and face my shit. So I want to know from you, I want to dive deeper into that. When did you realize you had to face your shit? And what did that journey look like to finally begin the healing process from all the things that you've gone through?
Well, when I found out about the infidelity, it was 2 years before me coming back to Jersey. So that was 2017. I came in Jersey in 2018. 2017 is when my reality came crushing down. And that was the first time ever in my life that I considered taking my life away. I had ripped up the pictures, broken everything. At the moment, we were transitioning from one state to another. So I moved first with the kids. So when I found out the truth, it was through an email that he just decided to confess everything for the last 10 years we had been together. So having such a big truth bomb drop on me, and I'm not saying we were perfect, of course not. And I had also someone else tell me that you knew what was going on, but you just didn't want to accept it. And that's also a hard pill to swallow. I did see stuff, but I was being a mom. Sometimes you just have to focus on one thing, because sometimes too much chaos can literally drown you.
Not even just being a mom, I'm going to let you continue, but like also you love someone, right? And it's not always bad. It's not always a shitty relationship. So you still have that hope. That's how I felt too. Like, yeah, I wasn't abused for the entire time that I was with my ex-boyfriend. There were moments that I was like, damn, this is the person who I fell in love with. But it got to the point that I was like, the bad is outweighing the good, and it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah, that was the first one. I guess I broke picture frames, and the first piece of glass I saw, I literally put it right next to my wrist. And that's when I asked myself, like, what are you doing? That was the first time I asked myself, like, what are you doing? You're not going to die from now on. But it took me a while to not, once that truth was dropped on me, the guilt came, what could have I done better? what was wrong with me, all of that hurt a lot. And then again in 2020, when I tried to also, at this time, I didn't have anything near me, but I was planning, like, let me end the day with my kids. Let me just say my I love yous, and then I'll just drive somewhere. I'll see where I land. And then after that, I was still trying to make it work in my marriage, but something got also discovered and I got treated in a way where I never did that to him. So like that was the tipping straw for me when I realized that above all the shit he did to me, and I was still open arms, willing to make it work, doing all of this, knowing that that same energy was not reciprocated, it was like, all right, time to wake up. That was my decision to move out of the house and go to my mom. And unfortunately, my mom, she came here as an immigrant. The only reason why she has her papers is because of the domestic violence case. But we have always come from a low or income household. I come from a Section 8 family. My mom still lives off Section 8. And I was living with my mom for a year and a half with my kids in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. And those are things that like I'm still healing from because I'm still in the cycle. I'm not going to lie. It's my first time talking about this. It's not something I'm proud of. But thankfully, because my mom is a survivor, because I am close to my mom tells me that in a cycle, you have to have a plan. People think that you can just exit, especially if you're a mom, especially if you've been a stay-at-home mom and most of your life, you don't have no financial security. It's tough pills that I had to swallow, but I did my crying. I'm still doing my crying, but now I'm crying, but taking action. And that action is, I'm not where I want to be right now. I still cohabit with the father of my kids. It's not like we hate each other, like I have mentioned before. We get along. It's just that, unfortunately, the fuck ups that happened in the relationship were just triggers since childhood. And that's how impactful childhood trauma is, because I never got to heal from my childhood trauma. Yeah. I went mentality that men are shit. You can't trust men. Then I find the man who gives me the world to find out he ain't shit in that regard, like for trauma survivors, people need to understand that it's not, yes, it happened, even if it happened 20 years ago, but it's not just the event. It's literally the trigger, the smell, the taste, the colors in the sky, anything. It could be a crumb on the floor and it will bring you back to that terrible, dark place. And the worst and the best part of this is that the worst part is that you feel alone. You feel like you can't move on anymore. But then the best part is that once you realize that you survived it, you realize that you did this on your own. You picked yourself up. Yes, you had support. Of course, we all need support. This is what we're talking about. We need support. We need community. But I was telling my mom this. I'm like, at the end of the day, people who are giving you their opinions are living their life. They're not losing sleep. Take what you want from them as you wish, but don't take your life so literal where you're no longer living for you. You must always revert back to yourself. And the way I started doing that is by reclaiming my voice. I can't just go out and move on and move out and do everything that I want to do, but I will get there. Like you said, I've come from an environment of chaos. Unfortunately, this is not new to me. This just sucks because trauma survivors come with a lot of guilt and shame. They feel because they have not advanced as much as their peers or as much as their family members that they're the problem. We're not the problem. Like, if we can have sympathy for someone who had a physical trauma brain injury, why can't we have the same empathy for someone who's suffering within internally? People have the misconception that just because we look good right now, it doesn't mean that we're not crumbling inside. Like I say in my movement, women have this beautiful smile. We're constantly complimented on it. Who can truly say that you think beyond that smile? And it took me to look pictures of myself, which I shared recently, a post of old pictures throughout the years, to showcase the impact that a photo does. A photo is worth 1,000 words. But look beyond those words. Don't just see the words. Like, try to find the meaning behind those words. Try to find the feeling, because the words are not just words, they're a feeling. So when I share stories, I combine not just the storytelling part in written form, but I combine it in audio form, because both the audio and the words are powerful. They bring you back to what that survivor had to overcome.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much once again for being so vulnerable. And I really love the fact that you said that you're so open about that you are not exactly where you want to be. And I'm in the same exact boat. When I escaped my abusive relationship, I flew back home to New Jersey. I was living in Florida, and I've been here ever since. I had to move back in with my family. There's moments where I'm like, fuck, I'm going to be 35 this year and I'm still living at home. And then I tend to like beat myself up because I'm not exactly where I should be. In whose opinion? Like, everyone's journey is fucking different, right? And I think it's just really important, especially for survivors, who've gone through whatever kind of trauma, like, we have to be more gracious with ourselves. Yo, we've been through some shit. This whole healing journey, it's so fucking cliche, but they say it all the time. Like, it's not linear. There's so many ups and downs that we got to go through, and we got to just take it one day at a time. And we also have to like big ourselves up for what we've gone through and how we've been able to heal through it. You know what I'm saying? Not get over it, but like heal through it. You know what I mean? And just give us grace and space and compassion and love, and just be like, yo, you're doing just fine, sis. You are doing just fine. So thank you for sharing your truth, because I know a lot of listeners are in similar situations and have those similar feelings, but they don't feel safe enough to express it. And I think by hearing it from someone, maybe it'll make them feel less alone.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this, because last year I did another collab and I spoke on financial abuse, because that's another one that gets very little recognition. But in that podcast, I took the first step to share my relationship, my marriage, which I constantly share on my stories and everything. Like, it's just not an area, because I'm still in it. It's not a story I'm ready to share. But what I can do is share parts that I'm ready to share. And that's what I want to remind trauma survivors, that when it comes to sharing your story, it ain't going to happen overnight. I'm 30. It took me this long to share my story. There is no end line. There's no end date, expiration date. Even if you want to speak today and your story happened 100 years ago, guess what? It still matters. It will still be validated. You will still be heard. It still matters. It's a voice. A lot of women that ended up dying and were never heard. I don't speak just for me. I speak for my mom, that till this day, she's 50 and she's just finding her voice. I still have to guide her and remind her that she's worthy of even buying herself a good shirt. Like, the psychological abuse that happens with domestic violence, with sexual assault, with any form of trauma is so penetrating to the soul that, like you said, I had to learn to give myself grace, because if we think in the mentality that we only have one life, I don't want to live my life giving so much power to my abuser, because if they're willing to abuse one person, they're willing to do it again.
Girl, she is preaching, y'all. It is Sunday when we're recording, so we are in church. I always start off with the heavy shit, and then I like to pivot to the more inspiring and motivating conversation for my listeners. And I really love your movement. I love that word. Her story and a smile. So with you being able to turn that pain into power, why do you think it's so important for us to speak up, especially as trauma survivors of any form of abuse that you've gone through? One, why do you think it's important to speak up? And two, what would you tell someone who wants to find their voice, but they're fucking afraid to do so?
So the importance of us speaking our truth, sharing our stories, it's more so for ourselves, to remind ourselves that we were given a voice for a reason. But because of abuse, because of trauma, because of whoever was controlling us, or whether we were allowing or not, don't matter, to control our life, our decisions, we allowed that to happen and we lost ourselves. And it's okay. Like, I'm constantly forgiving myself that it's okay to get lost. The whole point is to not just stay there. And with sharing your truth, with speaking your truth, it's not to prove to anyone that anything happened to you. To remind yourself, like, you being able to share your story is testimony of what you have survived. And no one will ever be able to take that away from you. And if they're struggling to share their story, I started off by journaling. And believe it or not, I hated journaling. I watched my mom through my childhood years journal, and now I understand. She told me, when I die, you will get all my stuff, right? So that will include all my journals. So the day she ends up passing away, I will probably come out with even more truths. And that's what I want people to understand, that our story, whatever we share, yes, it's our story, but you still have no idea the full story. So even if we just hear partial of a story, just imagine the full story. Just imagine living it in flesh, having to survive that. So that's why I think it's important to share our story, because it's not only will it hopefully encourage another individual to speak their truth. And I say this more towards women, because it's been proven to generations we have had to fight for our rights. We still are fighting for our rights. But one of them, I don't remember the quote exactly, but for me, it's like, I may die one day, but I want to be remembered as the woman who spoke her truth unapologetically. And by truth, I mean my story. I really want to stress this. Like, no one can tell you that your story is not real because they did not live it. They were not you. only you live that. Only you get to tell your story. Only you get to narrate how little you want to share. Me doing this, it's not just for me. Like I said, it's for the voices that became voiceless, for the women who do want to speak up and they just don't feel ready yet or just need that extra push. And my push is simply, hey, this space is open. It will always be. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here to hold your hand. In the meantime, heal as it best suits you, because there's so many ways to heal, but you need to ask yourself, what do you need?
I love that so much. And this is why I started this podcast. It's called Watch Us Thrive, right?
Mhm.
If you really think about it, it's named that way for a reason and features guests like you who are brave enough to talk about what they've gone through to hopefully help at least one person realize, yo, I can fucking do that too. Like I can tell someone, and it doesn't need to be on this grand, like you don't need to start a podcast to share your story. You don't need to become like a YouTuber. Like even if you just find one person in your circle that you trust and you be like, hey, I went through this and I want to talk about it with someone, like that is fucking healing. And by hearing these types of conversations with people like us who have gone through shit, I want to be able to create that safe space for people to find their voice and regain their power back.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
So you said that you started off with journaling and that was a really, even though you didn't like it, that was how you started your healing process. So what other resources or healing modalities have you used in your own journey that you would be willing to share with my audience that worked for you?
Yeah, so I want to share a little more of the journaling because this is attached to the way I like to share stories, or I like to tell my participants is to see it as a healing modality, because writing does heal. You're letting out everything that's in your mind. Most people have this misconception that your journal has to be like a perfect written entry, like if we're in school. Like, no. The whole point of journaling is if you woke up and the first thing in your mind is, I feel like shit, you're going to write that down. Because what we're trying to do is empty the mind in order to truly listen to what we need. Aside from that, I like binaural beats. These brain frequency waves. So like right before I went on, I put binaural beats for social anxiety because that's what I got. And so that just helps me calm down a little bit. A lot of nature, honestly, nature. I know it's cliche, and and by nature, I don't mean just a walk in the park. I mean, you're leaving your phone or you're putting it on silent. You're going to clear your mind and just sit. Another way is just speaking more. Honestly, is speaking more. I still have a challenge with speaking up. But the reason I do podcast collaborations is because I do feel safe with the individual who interviews me. If I do a collaboration, it's because I know I'm going to be heard and I'm going to be listened to. And so if you're not ready to share your story yet, find people who are willing to give you that space, who are willing to hold your hand. You know, right now, we're not holding hands physically, but just you allowing me to speak, it gives me that freedom to want to speak more.
And I saw that you did an in-person speaking event a few weeks ago. Shout out to you. I did my very first one the beginning of this month and I was like shitting on myself. It was so good afterwards. Like we overthinking, right? And thinking it's going to be the worst thing, but I'm sure you felt amazing afterwards.
Oh, I still want to do a whole video on that. But yes, because I'm processing it all. It's a monumental, it may seem small to others, but for us, it's such a big deal. Because up until arriving, I was not. I think I blacked out when I spoke. I don't even know what I said. But it was the reminder of how far we've come. If you're anything like me, I'm an impatient
girl.
Motherfucker.
Okay. Same.
But it's just, again, it goes back to grace. It goes back to grace and looking back at all we've done. Congratulations on your speaking engagement too. You know, knowing that you showed up for you. Again, it's always going to go back to you. Healing is for you. It will always be for you. And it's reminding yourself, when you get triggered again, dig deeper. That's what I want people to understand. Don't be afraid of your darkness, because in your darkness is where you find your light.
She's dropping gems, y'all. I love that so much. Absolutely. When you go through those really difficult moments of challenge, that is where the growth happens. And I also want to say, you might not feel that way while you're in it, but when you're able to do the work and the healing, when I moved back home, I didn't think, oh, okay, this is going to be the moment that I'm going to get my shit together. That's not reality. But if you're able to be gracious with yourself, like we said, and take the time, they say one day at a time, literally it's like one fucking second at a time. You'll be able to see it's going to be so worth it. But again, no one is going to do that work for you. You can have the people around you, the community and all that, but the only person who's going to make some shit happen The only person who can change is you.
It's true. Because my mom told me that too. And she's a woman and she loves me and I'm her daughter. And she just told me, like, some decisions you have to make on your own.
Absolutely. Thinking about all the shit that you've gone through, right, in your entire life. I know it's a lot, but what would you say is the top most important thing that you've learned about Wanda?
To not be afraid of my voice. I know I keep repeating the word voice, but I was a child and my whole family can attest to this. I was that tough cookie. I was outspoken. I will tell it how it is. That's the reason why I will always get in trouble. And over the years, I started dwindling down. It's easy to lose yourself and you don't realize it until you literally feel like you cannot speak. And so everything that I've overcome, I've survived, has taught me that speaking up is so important. When I got sexually molested, I spoke up. Did I get the justice I deserved? Did I get the attention I needed, the safety, the protection? No. But I carried so much guilt and shame and sadness for the 8-year-old Wanda, thinking that she could have done enough, not realizing that at such a young age, she was brave enough to tell and confess that she got molested. The fact that I overlooked that, the fact that I've been so hard on my younger self, on my teenage self, on my adult self, not recognizing that what has kept me alive has been me speaking up.
You've learned so much about yourself in those moments of challenge, and you've been able to find your voice in those moments. And I think that's so beautiful. And that's definitely giving hope to other people to just remember how much power you have within yourself if you just speak up with whatever it is that you've gone through. And it doesn't need to be this huge trauma like sexual assault or domestic violence. Like, even if you were bullied as a kid, like, that's a whole form of trauma that a lot of people tend to overlook, but that shit follows you and it fucks you up and it makes you, like you said, diminish your light and you stay small and you don't want to be seen. But just knowing that there's so much power and so much healing just speaking up and talking about what you've gone through, that anyone can really do it. And it's a challenge, like we said, it's not rainbows and butterflies, but it can happen to anyone.
And I wanted to also share, because I did a reel like long time ago, but it was my mom's words. And till this day, I carry them because unfortunately, my side of my dad's family has always been very envious for whatever reason. We have been the most abused and somehow they're envious. But my mom always told me that she would always tell family members that would just talk shit, is like basically say, don't envy me for my peace. After my mom left my dad, everyone was like, oh, your house is so peaceful. You're at peace, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I envy you. I'm jealous of your peace. And she literally had to keep it 100. And she was like, don't ever be jealous of my peace. You have no idea the price I had to pay for my peace. Don't ever envy the peace of a survivor, because they literally had to save their life, literally, to get that peace. Once you get that taste of freedom, once you get that taste of reclaiming your power, you're not going to want to go back. And when it comes to healing, yes, we may take a few steps back, but just focus on how many steps forward you have already taken.
I want to ask you a personal question. If I'm overstepping, please stop me and let me know. Do you still have a relationship with your father?
I do.
How's that been?
My relationship with my dad did not get better until I had kids. And that is because I made the decision that because I did not grow up having grandparents, the closest grandparent I had was my dad's stepmother, and she was a whole other story. I just never had that parental love, only from my mom's mom in Mexico. And I thank her till this day for my childhood. If I had any childhood, was my vacations to Mexico, because I could literally be a kid. When a person tells a kid to be a kid, that's what I was. Maybe I had to be an adult in my own environment, but in the summers, I was a kid. The reason why I wanted to somehow repair my relationship with my dad was because of my kids, because I didn't want my kids to grow up without their grandparents. I'm going to be honest, I have not forgiven my dad over what he has done to my mom. After they got divorced, he ended up going back to my half-brother's mom, the woman he cheated on my mom with. But I have been able to understand at least his side a little better. I'm not excusing him in any way, shape, or form, but in me opening myself to be able to hopefully understand him has allowed me to get closer. And I only got closer to him after I told him of me being sexually molested. And I told him that only like 2 years ago, I told him that. And that's when he actually confessed that something similar happened to him. If I'm being honest, that very moment is when I decided that, you know what, as long as I'm here, I may not have the relationship I always wished for with my dad, because I did love him. Like, I loved him. I was a daddy's girl. He was my world. But not only did he destroy my mom's life, he destroyed me. And for so long, I carried my mom's pain. And now that I finally let that go, now it's sinking in that I'm still dealing with Wanda's pain. I carried my mom's pain for so long that I never paid attention to mine. And I had to be honest with myself. I have not forgiven my dad. But the only reason I do want to have a relationship, our relationship is literally boundaries. Like, I'm very strict. Like, he knows I don't play. There's been times where I've said, don't talk to me anymore. Like, I've blocked him and everything. And unfortunately, that's the only way he will react. But he has learned, thankfully, that I don't play. Once we're going to have a relationship, this is how it's going to go. And even though I'm a parent now, as a child, I believe that the parent is the one that needs to be taking the action. I don't care how old your child is, especially if you know you fucked up, especially if you know they're suffering right now as adult children, you need to take action. But I didn't do it just for me. I did it for my kids. I want my kids to remember, to have a memory of their grandparents. I may have not had my parents, but my kids can have that.
And I love that you brought up setting boundaries. I think that's so important, especially for trauma survivors. Respecting and honoring your boundaries and not allowing people to overstep them, that is a part of the healing process as well.
And that's a hard one too. Again,
yes.
Boundaries are not punishment. And the people who get offended, who get butthurt, are not your people. They'll understand. That's another thing I've learned through trauma is that I no longer look, and this is relationships in any form, romantic, friendships, family, anything. If you are not there for me in my darkest times, I owe you nothing. I already don't owe you nothing. But if you have not been through my darkness with me, I owe you zero shit. And that's taken me a long time to say that. And now I say it and it feels good.
Yes, that's how you're taking your power back, right?
Yeah.
I love that so much. Oh my God, you are amazing. I just want to tell you that. Like, and I know this is just like the tip of the iceberg for the shit that you've gone through. And definitely think you should write a book because you do like to write and you're creative. So yeah, I'm putting that bug in your ear to make that shit happen, okay? Yes. So I want to know, since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast, tell me your definition of thriving.
Once you start feeling like yourself, you're thriving. Because when we lose ourselves, we kind of forget who we are. And sometimes we try to go backwards and recoup who we were. And that's not who we were because we're constantly changing. Ever since I turned 30 now, I'm trying to act like I'm so old. I'm getting all these realizations that on some fuck it shit, like fuck it. That's my favorite word, but now I say it with such power. Like, I need to remember who the fuck I am. I'm strong. I'm that person. Like, I'm that woman that's not gonna shut up. Like, I have gotten myself in situations that I could have avoided had I kept my mouth shut. But at the same time, I'm also a person that even if it's not about me, if I see someone else is being done wrong, I don't care if I end up getting beat up. I'm going to stand up for that person. And I have done that with my own family. I've just been that girl. It's part of me. I've been called feisty, again, a tough cookie. I've been called aggressive. I've been called arrogant, but I'm none of those things. If I carry this persona that I'm strong or that I will beat you up, it's literally just my defense wall. Is it healthy? No, but I'm aware of it now. I'm healing towards that. And for me, healing is not just awareness. Awareness is just the first step. Taking action is what will really get the healing process going. And when it gets going, again, you will come through a lot of dark night of the souls that I like to call it, which is everything that you've lived through will come and just get you and try to push you down and keep you down. The reminder is to see it not as a burden anymore or as something that's bothering you, but more so as like, what is it trying to teach you? Obviously, you know you're not 100% healed. So what is the next lesson towards that healing? What's the next lesson from that trauma that you can continue healing from? So now, instead of beating myself up that I'm not done healing, because that's another thing. A lot of the conversations I hear is that don't call it a healing journey because then that means you're always going to be healing. But I'm like, it's the same thing as changing. Like, aren't we always supposed to be changing? And the same thing goes for healing. I don't see a healing journey as a drag. I see it as it's only going to elevate me to who I know I already am, but I still need to get there. And in order for me to get there, I have to heal.
Yeah, anyone who says that they're healed, like ED at the end, they're fucking full of shit because life is always going to life and shit is always going to happen. And there's always things you're going to have to heal from. So don't believe the shit that you be hearing, especially on social media, y'all. There's a lot of bullshit on social media. Girl, that's another conversation. No, but I love that so much. Let's go back to 8-year-old Wanda. Being the woman that you are today, what is one piece of advice you would tell her?
Honestly, I wouldn't tell her anything. I would just hug her because at that moment, I truly felt alone. without knowing it. I didn't realize how lonely I felt until I had to go back and heal from a childhood trauma. I did not need to tell my inner child that not only that it was not your fault, like, yes, I did say that, but that wasn't my main thing. It wasn't about telling her that she could have spoken more, nothing like that. It was more so I needed that hug. I needed to feel safe. If I could tell her anything, is that you are safe now. I have never felt safe. I have always looked for that safety with men, mainly because I didn't have that growing up. You know, if anyone loves me, I try to hold on hard, but it's just, that's not anything. Like, it's reminding myself that I'm now here for her. Like, baby girl, I'm here for you. Like, I got you, you're safe, and no one will gonna touch you. No one's gonna cross you anyway. You know, you're protected. What baby Wanda needed back then was to feel safe and protected, and she didn't get that. And now I'm alive to tell her that.
Yes, and tell her that you love her.
Yeah.
Okay, final question before you plug in how we can work with you and follow you. When you're no longer on this living earth, someone needs to sit down and write about you. What do you want them to say?
That I tried. I know I'm not the only person that puts a lot of pressure on themselves. Even if I die tomorrow, I'll be okay with knowing that I got to commune with another woman and remind each other that we got each other. You know, I want to be remembered as another woman who was there for another woman. I created this movement originally for everyone because I'm a mom, I'm a boy mom, but I really had to narrow it down, like what really matters. And what matters to me as a woman, I still feel like we're not being supported or heard the way we are. And I'm at peace now, if I were to die tomorrow, knowing that I at least took that step forward to speak for all of us. I want to remind trauma survivors that the word selfish is actually not a bad thing. We are the people to be selfish, because if we want to propel forward and heal like we say we want to do and help create impact and be there for another sister, we need to do the healing. We need to do the work. I want to be remembered as a woman who tried and who spoke her truth.
You're not trying, you're doing. And I know just by hearing a little bit of your story and by being able to follow along your journey, you're helping so many women. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on here and being so open. I know that it's healing for you, but it's definitely going to be healing for a lot of other people. So I want to thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank
yes.
you. You got
thank you. No, I love it. And thank you for feeling safe enough to open up. And I know people are going to want to know more about you. They're going to want to follow you. They're going to want to work with you. So please let my audience know your social media. How can we be featured on Her Story in a Smile?
Well, again, thank you for having me today. Your space definitely made me feel safe. So thank you for that. So again, I just want to repeat, my name is Wanda. I am a woman, trauma, and mental health advocate. My movement is called Her Story in a Smile, and it's a safe space, safe online space where I welcome women from any background, doesn't matter, who considers themselves a trauma survivor or a mental illness survivor, and you're just ready to share your story. I don't put any pressure. I just like to extend the open invite for when you're ready to speak. This is a movement, so this is a lifetime thing. If you're not ready to share your story today, there will be a time for you to do so. And the way you can do that is you can either DM me on Instagram. Right now, Instagram is my movement. I have no other channel aside from YouTube. So you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Her Story in a Smile. It's one word. If you go to my link tree, the very first tab is a Google form, and that Google form will take you to submit your story. It's pretty self-explanatory. And if you have any problems, you can reach out to me again via DM or email, which is herstoryinasmile@gmail.com.
Thank you. Definitely going to leave all your info in the show notes. And once again, I just want to say, I love the word movement. That is so fucking powerful. And you are creating a movement and helping other women heal by giving them a safe space to open up and share their story. So thank you for what you're doing. Please don't stop, because the world needs more women who look like us and talk like us to be in these spaces.
Yes, no, thank you. And as a Latina, porque también hablo español, so las Latinas, nunca es tarde compartir tu historia tampoco. Como Latinas en nuestra comunidad hay que abocar más por la salud mental, por el trauma. Somos mujeres no solamente sobrevivientes, pero mujeres que traen valor, mucho valor, y nos podemos apoyar en una manera que nos puede transformar como mujeres maravillosas que somos. So as Latina women, we are here for each other. And the more we get together, the more we advocate for our community, the more we can remind that Latina woman to advocate and speak up for herself. And for any woman out there, this is what we do. This is the work we do. We do it not only because we survived it, but because we will be damned if we have another woman added to this.
Amen, y'all. Oh my God. This was fucking fantastic. Thank you so much, Wanda. You are a ray of light, and I'm so glad that we connected, and I can't wait to continue watching your journey.
Likewise. Much love.